Russia marked the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II with a parade, and world leaders including China's Xi Jinping are all attending the parade amid tight security, of course, to guard against any Ukrainian attacks after 3 years of devastating war. And troops from over a dozen countries participated in the Victory Day military parade, each marching under their national flag as their respective leaders looked on from the stand. Let's now bring in SABC News correspondent Dasha Chernyshova, who's joining us live from Moscow. Dasha, it's good to have you with us. A very good afternoon. So how are the proceedings at the 80th Soviet Victory Parade proceedings? Of this particular interest is, of course, that this particular parade takes place amid a week that was dramatically marked by a series of Ukrainian drone strikes in Moscow that even saw a shutdown of some airports.
Well, indeed, we have seen this large-scale military parade taking place in Moscow's Red Square, a show of Russia's military might and also a show of Russia not being isolated, despite what Moscow says were the Western attempts to make sure Russia is isolated. We have seen up to 30 heads of international states attending this military parade in Moscow, and the Kremlin has thanked those who have still come to the Russian capital despite the pressure from the Western countries. The visit of Serbia's President Alexander Vučić, as well as the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico, has been specifically outlined as a very important step and a very important gesture by these European leaders amidst the pressure from the European countries to make sure they are not coming to Russia. We have seen also the Russian president addressing the military parades, and in his address he was praising the generation that has been fighting to eliminate the threat of Nazism. He also has stressed that Moscow will not allow the distortion of history, the attempts to rewrite history and to diminish Moscow's role. And in a note to other leaders who were attending those festivities, President Vladimir Putin thanked the Allied forces who also played an important role in the victory in World War II. Especially, he said that Chinese forces were also participating. And after this military parade was over, he actually shook hands with some of the North Korean troops who were marching in Moscow's Red Square as part of that parade. Just keep in mind, Moscow has recently admitted that North Korea was important in helping Russia liberate its Kursk region from the Ukrainian incursion. We also have seen the Russian president holding the ceremony at the Kremlin for those international leaders, and also there were numerous bilateral meetings that President Vladimir Putin held throughout the day.
Absolutely, and one of those being, of course, the most high-profile guest, I suppose, that is in attendance this year, Dasha, that is being Chinese President Xi Jinping, who we understand signed quite a number of bilateral, intergovernmental, as well as interdepartmental documents. Talk to us about those.
Yes, that's right. Chinese delegation was quite representatives, and the Russians have been talking to them for several hours. The Russian president and the president of China, Xi Jinping, signing 2 joint statements as well as more than 20 international documents on the bilateral cooperation. Now, the attempt by these 2 countries is to make sure they are improving the quality of their cooperation as well as the quantity. We have seen some statements when it comes to the political alignment, but also the Russian president has been meeting other leaders. For instance, on Friday, he met the president of Brazil, Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, with Silva saying that his visit to Russia indicates the return to the path and trajectory that has been taken before. The issue of Ukraine was also something that has been discussed in these bilateral meetings. Not much has emerged as to what direction that has taken, but all those international leaders have been suggesting their mediation efforts to help and find a negotiated settlement for the conflict in Ukraine.
And I mean, are you getting any word on this unilateral ceasefire, Dasha, that was announced by the Kremlin? Are you able to confirm anything to us in this regard?
Well, we have heard that Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed that the Russian soldiers are abiding by this unilateral ceasefire declared by the Russian side. Russia was hoping that Ukraine would follow this suit, but we understand that Moscow said there were more than 5,000 cases of violations by the Ukrainian armed forces of this unilateral ceasefire that Moscow has proposed. We're also hearing that there were at least 4 attempts by the Ukrainian troops to breach the Russian border in the Kursk region. Moscow saying those attempts have been repelled. But also keep in mind that Moscow has come under the barrage of the Ukrainian drone attacks in the days leading up to the Victory Day celebrations. Moscow region as well as other regions, they have been destroying the Ukrainian drones. And for the holding of those festivities, the mobile internet connectivity in Russia's central regions, especially Moscow, has been disrupted by the authorities to make sure there are no attempts by the Ukrainian side to attack those cities, and especially the parade in Moscow's Red Square. So we understand that those attempts have been successful on the part of the Russian security, but undoubtedly what Moscow would like to see is the wider negotiated settlement for this Ukraine conflict instead of finding any short-term truce, as it has been suggested by the Ukrainians and Americans. That Moscow so far has not been in favor of that 30-day ceasefire, suggesting that instead there has to be the wider deal.
Thank you so much to SABC News correspondent in Moscow, Dasha Chernyshova.